Welcome to Amplify Family Medicine, the official podcast by the Alabama Academy of Family Physicians. In each episode, we dive into the challenges, triumphs, and innovative practices that shape family medicine across our state. Whether you are a medical professional, a student with an interest in family medicine, or simply a health-conscious listener, Amplify Family Medicine promises to provide invaluable insights and inspire action. Let's amplify the impact of family physicians in Alabama together.
Hello and welcome to Amplify Family Medicine. I'm your host for this episode, Executive Vice President of the Alabama Academy of Family Physicians, Jeff Arrington. Today, we are talking to State Representative Ed Oliver. Representative Oliver was first elected to the Alabama House of Representatives in 2018. He is the chair of the House Military and Veterans Affairs Committee. He served in the Army as a helicopter pilot and then as an ambulance helicopter pilot for 15 years. He lives in Dayton. He is also a member of the House Agriculture and Forestry Committee, House Historical Records Advisory Board Legislative Oversight Committee, and House Lee County Legislation Committee. And he was the vice chair of the Alabama House Health Committee. Please welcome Representative Oliver. Thank you for being with us today.
Glad to be here, Jeff.
Is there anything you'd like to tell our listeners about you and more so about what was the calling to run for elected office?
I grew up in a rural area. I live in Tallapoosa County on Lake Martin, which I'm familiar with all the things that are issues for people that live in such place: healthcare, infrastructure, roads, all the things that a good state legislator ought to be able to fix.
You have been a staunch advocate for rural development, healthcare, and education. And we have been very fortunate to work with you over the last couple of years. Wanted to talk to you a little bit today about legislation that will be directly impacting the members of our academy and the overall healthcare of the state of Alabama. Want to give thanks to you and your leadership, along with the members of the legislature over the last couple of years, for passing legislation in regards to the Physician Workforce Act. And, as you know, that legislation dealt with removing some boundaries for physicians that wanted to relocate to Alabama. It created a category for an unmatched medical student, or a student that graduated from medical school and did not match in a residency program. And it also removes some barriers for international medical graduates to expedite their full-fledged practicing license. So we sincerely appreciate all you've done in regards to that. As we look towards the 2025 legislative session, I wanted to ask you about a bill you've sponsored multiple years that deals with repealing the existing rural physician tax credit. Do you mind speaking to that?
Well, we're looking at ways to keep physicians in rural areas, and this is just one more way to incentivize physicians to come to rural areas. Of course, the best way to get and retain a rural physician is to have him be born here. It's much easier to get someone to come home. In addition to coming home, it's nice if you can offer a tax incentive to get them to do so. And in today's climate, as you're well aware, making money is not nearly as easy as it used to be in any medical profession, particularly in a rural area. So this tax credit becomes very important in that respect.
We've been trying to get this legislation amended for over 10 years. And, I believe that the authors of this legislation that was passed in 1993, their hearts were in the right place. But the existing law gives a $5,000 state tax credit to physicians that are practicing in rural Alabama for a five-year period. When we look at inflation, when we look at the cost of running a medical practice, a lot has changed in the last 31 years.
Absolutely. It was certainly time to update this piece of legislation.
You talked about the best way to get a physician back to rural Alabama is to identify those young men and women that are from rural areas and potentially offer them incentives to come back. We've got two programs in the state of Alabama: the Rural Medical Scholars Program at the University of Alabama and the Rural Medical Program at Auburn University. The Rural Medical Scholars Program has been around for almost 30 years. The rural medical program in Auburn has been around for 17, 18 years. And they have worked diligently to identify young people that are excelling in math and science and want to go back to their hometowns to practice. And hopefully this year, by getting this bill pre-filed, and we want to thank you for that, that we can get some traction. And, we also recognize that this is not going to be the panacea that fixes the access to care and physicians wanting to either move back or relocate to a rural part of Alabama, but it definitely can't hurt.
No, I think it'll be helpful. $10,000 a year over 4 years, that's $40,000. And in the great scheme of things, that doesn't sound like much money, but if you look at the cost of operating a physician's practice, I think it's helpful.
Absolutely. And we agree. One of the things that we've seen for years, and you spoke about it on your interview with the Capital Journal last week, that, physicians are, they're moving out of the state, whether it's the payer component. I think we could name 5 or 6 different things that's causing this exodus of physicians. But working through the Alabama legislature and offering programs like the Board of Medical Scholarship Awards, which is a loan forgiveness program for medical students, is definitely something that we can add to our quiver, if you will, as another layer to attract, recruit, and retain these physicians.
No, absolutely. Absolutely.
Now, I believe it was the first part of last week. The tax tribunal in Alabama reviewed a case of a family physician from over in Bibb County. Unfortunately, this member of ours was not on the prevailing side, but the judge put some language in his ruling in regards to what he thinks the Alabama legislature should do. What's your take on that moving forward?
Well, I think as we update this legislation, the objective, of course, is to make it inclusive, not exclusive. So I think defining the boundaries becomes very important.
I completely agree. And I think one of the big problems that exists within the existing statute is that there is a hospital privilege component. Well, in the last 31 years, we've seen way too many rural hospitals in this state close. And to your point, the definition of rural in that existing law is murky at best.
Oh, absolutely. And as hospitals close, why would we want to limit the ability to attract physicians to those areas that don't have a standing hospital?
We couldn't agree more. And, that's another reason why we want to thank you for your leadership and your dedications, and not only, access to healthcare in your district, but something that has plagued the state of Alabama. As you said, the new bill would give an inflationary increase of $10,000 a year of a state tax credit for 4 years, but it would truly define the definition of rural. Rural communities is defined as an area within a county having a population of 60,000 or less inhabitants. That is either of the following: a municipality that has a population of 20,000 or less inhabitants, and the unincorporated area of the county. I'm hopeful, and I know you are as well, that by better defining rural, we are able to keep folks that truly do not qualify from trying to accept this. But we've also worked in the legislation that the Alabama Health Education Consortium will be the vetting body when a physician applies for that credit. When we think about a family physician or a primary care provider opening up a practice in a rural community, on the conservative side, $1 million a year in economic impact is produced by that one single physician. Do you not agree that this is something that not only will help the health and well-being of citizens in rural Alabama, but also lift up those local economies?
Certainly, healthcare, regardless of what it looks like, is one of the cornerstones of your local economy. And if you don't have adequate healthcare, then you have no future development. And that's just the way it is. So that's the way I approach healthcare in a local economy.
Another thing the legislature did for the last couple of years is they've allocated money to help with residency slots for primary care physicians. I think that is a huge step in the right direction for truly a homegrown, physician-led, robust healthcare system. So we want to thank you for that as well. Part of the tax credit bill that was recently pre-filed has a sunset provision in it. Can you describe what that means and what the implications are for the future of the rural physician tax credit program?
Everything needs to be looked at in 4 or 5 years. If we're going to make taxpayers pay for something, we want to make sure they're getting the best bang for their dollar. So we would review that, and Sunset would get that as a committee in the House, of course. They would take a look at it and see if it's still a viable program. If it's not, we'd do away with it. If it is, we would keep it going.
You know, statistics show that if you graduate from a medical school in Alabama and you leave the state and complete your residency, 80% of those students, or young physicians, I should say, that leave the state to finish their training end up staying in that state in which they completed their training. So again, back to the legislature, thinking about the future and recognizing that we need to invest in a robust primary care workforce. And, to that point, 15 years ago, we had 5 family medicine residency programs in Alabama. Today, we've got 11. And we've got students that want to pick up the banner and they want to become primary care physicians. And, we are hopeful that with legislation like this rural tax credit, with other programs that help reduce the amount of medical school debt that they're graduating with, that we truly can continue to grow our own physicians in this state.
I'm absolutely encouraged by the fact that we still have interest. There are other states where you can go and make more money. I'm thoroughly impressed with the people we have here, young people that want to come back and contribute to their communities. And I'm one of those people that I believe those are the people we should be targeting for medical school in the first place, the ones who want to stay here and want to serve. So yes, any incentive that encourages people to come to rural areas, I'm all for. But I think it's just as important that we're sending the right people to medical school.
Absolutely, absolutely. The issue with rural hospitals closing, I know that's something that's near and dear to your heart. Where do you think we go from here in regards to keeping some of these rural hospitals open? I know that in the last couple of years, we've seen more and more labor and delivery units close across the state. Women are having to drive, an hour and a half to get care. What can we do at the state level that might, swing the pendulum back the opposite direction?
Sadly, I think it's when the public realizes that they don't have the care that they need, when the public becomes involved and they once again put pressure on the political arm of government to do something. I'm afraid that that's going to be after the fact. I'm afraid that we could be in dire straits by the time that happens. But that's what I look for. Is the public eventually one day will decide that this is unacceptable.
I agree. On a completely different note, if one of our listeners is hearing us talk through the legislative process, what advice can you give someone that really has not engaged in the legislative process, but really wants to contribute? Is there any advice you could give our listeners?
I would say that if you're a medical professional, if you're a doctor, you need to join one of the political organizations that is out trying to do work for you, to get out and let the public know what we're doing. If you're a consumer, talk to your state government leaders, your state representative, your state senator, your county commission, your city government. Healthcare is an integral part of your local infrastructure. It's a necessary thing that you have to have if you're going to grow or even maintain the same population that you have now.
I just read a story recently that in Pickens County, which is the home to, I believe, a little over 20,000 Alabamians, only has one ambulance that's running.
Absolutely. And their hospital closed fairly recently. So they are in a very critical spot. That's an area that I actually serviced in the helicopter when I was an air ambulance pilot. Because of where they are located, it's very important that they have that paramedic there.
Talk about what's going on in your district in regards to a program that you helped get off the ground?
We have it's similar to an ambulance service, but it does not transport patients. We use the license for our local ambulance service to operate a pickup truck, which is a four-wheel drive, big heavy-duty pickup truck that has one paramedic. He has all of the tools you need, Lucas device, limited extrication tools, monitor, and he responds to emergency calls as well as he goes to calls that are referrals from a local doctor. The objective is to keep from transporting chronically ill patients that he can go visit at home. So far, that has worked very, very well. It's kept us from being so short on our ambulance. And the point I want to make about the paramedic, he has all of the life-saving skills and tools for an extended ambulance time. So he can keep you alive till somebody gets there to help.
Is there anything that you might want to let our listeners know about what we might expect when the legislature goes back into session first part of next year?
I would like to think that I would have some idea, but the truth is I've got the bills I've got pre-filed. I'm concerned with the bills that are related to my chairmanship on military and veterans affairs. So there are probably a lot of things floating around that I'm just not aware of at this point. Now, as it gets closer and we start hearing more, and of course the Republican caucus will meet in November, then I'll have a better handle on what's coming up. Another piece of legislation that we have that we think will help rural and other places in Alabama is legislation that authorizes Medicaid to pay for home colon rectal cancer screening. That sounds like an obscure, simple thing, but it actually costs us millions of dollars to treat these patients. And it would be much better to detect that early and through a screening process than it would be to pay for late-term discovery.
Is there anything else you think you might want to add? Because we sincerely appreciate you taking the time to sit down with us today and speak to the family physicians of the Alabama Academy of Family Physicians, or anybody that decides to tune in.
No, I'm happy to hear from anyone that has any ideas on innovative ways to continue healthcare in rural areas. That is my passion. It's something I've worked in. I've seen firsthand success stories and failures. So I'm very tuned into what's going on in the world right now. And I really hope that the fact that people choose to live in rural areas is still a viable thing to do.
Absolutely. Well, Representative Oliver, we can't thank you enough for being a part of Amplify Family Medicine's podcast. We want to thank you for your leadership in the legislature, and we look forward to working very closely with you as the 2025 legislative session kicks off. So thank you again for your time. If you'd like to become a member of the AAFP, please visit aafp.org. And be sure to subscribe to our podcast and get notified when a fresh episode of Amplify Family Medicine hits the web. Until our next edition, stay safe and well.